Hello, and welcome to this edition of Faith to Live By, where each week I help us explore current events from a biblical and prophetic perspective, so we, as God's children, can know how He wants us to respond. I'm Pam Christian, the researcher, writer, producer, and host of this podcast, which I started around mid-2020 in response to the radical expanse of tyranny the world began to see and experience. As shocked as we all were to begin to learn of the evil agenda against us, as God's people, we have pressed forward in response to His instructions with all confidence in the authority, power, and promises of God. For over 4 years, we've been pressing ahead as God has continued to reveal more and more evil, with God telling us there's still more to be uncovered. We've learned what was long held a conspiracy theory for a one-world government was and is, in fact, a real conspiracy that the powers behind it pushed to the forefront, believing they had gained sufficient control to work in the open. The self-appointed elite, who are consumed with greed, money, and power, actually believe they've gained enough momentum that even God can't stop them. What these people are governed by is the same ancient spirit that originally opposed God, who seeks to destroy all that is important to God, which includes you and me, and God's plans for this world. However, as God has revealed in His written word, the Bible, and as He has revealed through His modern-day prophets, and as He has revealed in the hearts of His children who diligently seek Him, evil will not win. No matter how much it may appear evil is winning, in the end, God and His perfect will shall prevail. The enemy of God has pulled out all the stops and is wreaking havoc on every front, trying to wear down the saints. Knowing this, each week I ask the Lord what He wants me to focus on to help fortify you. I don't want to simply report on current events. I want to help us understand how these issues of today have been part of the enemy's grand scheme to defeat God, and how his ancient plans for destruction have been carefully put in place generation after generation over thousands of years. I want us to see how we, as God's people, have failed to be and do what God has instructed and equipped us to do. Yet, even in our failure, God has faithfully intervened in the affairs of humanity to assure His good and perfect plan for His people, and the world prevails. If we want God's help and deliverance, we must now choose to deliberately partner with God to see His kingdom will done on earth as it is in heaven. With so much going on in the world at the same time, I must ask God what He wants me to address. At this time, the focus is on Canada and Greenland and Great Britain's long played out plan for world dominance as a major proponent for a one-world government apart from God, and the impact President Trump is having as the leader of the United States, who is being led by God. Believing this, I am left with some curious questions. What should we make of President Trump saying Canada should become the 51st state for the United States? What should we make of President Trump talking about helping Greenland break from the Danish monarchy by joining the United States? What should we make of President Trump saying he's intrigued by the idea of the United States becoming a member of the British Commonwealth? And most important, how should we as God's children respond to all of that's going on, to be sure we are in proper partnership with God to see His kingdom will done on earth as it is in heaven? With the help of my guest, Prophet Barry Wunsch, known as the Canadian Hammer, we will tackle these important questions today and next week. But before today's episode, I must make sure you know about the changes to our planned trip to Greece so you can have every opportunity to be part of the trip. For the original tour, we needed the minimum number of attendees confirmed by March 31st, which we didn't meet. So I talked to those who had signed up to see if moving the potential trip to April 2026 would work, and for all who signed up, it will work. So rather than cancel, we are planning the same trip from April 19th, 2026 to April 27th, 2026 with an optional 4-day cruise of the Grecian Islands as an add-on. The tour is called The Footsteps of Paul, where we will stand some of the very places the Apostle Paul did. People who have taken this tour have commented on the stunning scenery, the rich history, and how actually walking and standing in the areas where the Apostle Paul traveled and taught made the Bible come alive as never before in ways that will stay with them forever. I do want to point out the guided portion of the tour is a walking tour among some ruins and with some steps, but it's not considered challenging to the average senior and of course everyone who's younger. On your free time, you will have the option of walking, using the metro, Uber, or taxis. Immediately following the ground tour, we're offering an optional 4-day cruise add-on to visit the Grecian Islands. And for those of you who prefer, if you want to simply join us for the 4-day cruise, we have that option available as well. If you've ever wanted to go to Greece with a semi-guided tour, meaning you'll have plenty of free time to do as you want, with a small group of like-minded people, I can't think of any better offer than what we've come up with. Just send me an email to faithtoliveby@PamelaChristianMinistries.com with your name and the number in your party and your phone number, and then expect to hear back from me when it gets closer to the actual registration time. There is no obligation to place your name and information on the first contact for registration list. For pricing and details, visit my Beyond the Podcast page to learn of the exclusive tour package created for my podcast listeners. If you missed any portion of what I just shared, please listen to the end of this podcast to learn more and know how to get your name and the number in your party on the list for first registration options. The sooner, the better, since the total number in the tour is limited. Now, if you don't know about my guest, Barry Wunsch, he's been uniquely positioned by God as a prophet to help guide government officials specifically for the destiny of Canada and the proper establishment of Canada with her allied nations, perhaps the strongest ally for Canada being the United States of America. And he's been dubbed the Canadian Hammer because of God's calling on his life to boldly cite government corruption, calling people and governments into account. You can learn more about Barry from his website, which you'll find in the show notes. Now, as promised, here's part 2 of my interview with internationally recognized prophet of God, Barry Wunsch. I'm picking up from last week's part 1 message, where Barry expresses his take on President Trump's calling for Canada to become the 51st state for the United States.
So President Trump, I believe he's coming and he's saying, look, Canada, I'm giving you opportunity to deal with the mess that's there, with 500,000 Chinese troops on your soil, with the probably, I would say, millions of Muslim, Islamic, militant, aged young men in Canada that are a threat not only to our nation, but also to the northern border of America. Deal with that, or I will come and I will deal with it for you. And I mean that's where the 51st state kind of talk comes. And so we're saying that there are a group of Canadians that are ready to do this themselves and confront an illegitimate government and say, hey, we're going to make a declaration of independence. We're going to put a flag in the ground. We're going to make a declaration as a sovereign people and come out from the crown into basically a constitutional republic.
You know, Barry, the Lord has spoken through you many, many times
Canada
about
the nation
Canada
we were called
and
to
about
be.
the deliverance of Canada. And I think we've all known that things are going to get worse before they get
Yes.
better. And I believe we're living in
Yes.
those very times, wouldn't you say?
Yes. Yes. I mean, we could think of this. I mean, this is, we could very well go into a situation here, if it goes down that route, where Canada could become another Ukraine, where there could be a war fought on Canadian soil because of the globalists here in Canada that are, they're puppets of the cabal, and what, they, so if indeed our American friends, then these threats continue to escalate, and President Trump says, enough, we're coming to clean it up because you guys haven't. I mean, this could be a scenario where Canada could turn into that kind of a situation. Now, we are believing, and I mean, the Lord took me into an encounter a couple of years ago where I was in a big warehouse, and they were gathering evidence across the nations, bringing it in, evaluating it, logging it, putting into documents, basically preparatory for court proceedings and tribunals. And Sidney Powell was actually over the loudspeaker, and she was kind of helping orchestrate stuff. And President Trump came in and was walking around the warehouse, just kind of getting a briefing and an update of what was going on, and bringing the exposure of the cabal globally and in America, and the plan of cleaning up. And President Trump came over and he walked to me and he spoke in my ear, and his breath, I could feel his hot breath on my ear. And he said, Barry, we're dealing with things here in America first, and then we'll be coming to help you in Canada. And I was taken in
On
and I
the
actually
ground
saw
kind of a situation?
Americans coming in and helping liberate our nation from on the ground, on the ground. I saw them come in and start making, arrests under international law, these things to deal with the cabal, globalist leaders that are here. And so I believe that the groundwork is actually being prepared
Yeah.
for all of that
God has
actually
also
to
been very
happen.
clear
As
this year,
difficult as it
2025, that the time
is
between
to walk and
Purim
live
and
through.
Passover would be really intense. And we're certainly seeing that. What has the Lord said to you about this particular period of time till about the end of
Yeah.
April?
Well, I mean, he hasn't specifically dropped a word on me, but I can tell you this, that I know through the relationships I've got prophetically, what has kind of led us here, that there are many things that are in high motion right now, and level, behind the scenes. There's meetings, there's briefings going on uh, that are of extreme significance, not only to America but Canada, and also in relation to
Hmm.
threats from other nations over North America. And I mean, it just seems, when it doesn't seem like it could run any hotter, something else kind of shows up. And I mean, none of this is a surprise to the Lord. He's running ahead of it, and he's actually using all this to bring it to the light. And sadly, the narratives that are still out through media and through the deep state and cabal governmental systems here, Canada, probably in America to a degree, is they're believing this narrative. And in Canada, Trump has kind of become an enemy, to a lot of Canadians that really aren't aware of what he's doing. They kind of read the surface, and they really don't understand. So Trump's support has actually really diminished among many Canadians here because they just keep pumping it. And even the Canadian Federal Conservative Party and Pierre Poilievre and these guys, Stephen Harper, they're joining the fight against Trump. I mean, and so, and this is where this is escalating, and this is where President Trump, I believe, in the art of war,
I think that's exactly what
knows
he's
how
doing.
to
And
bring this to
as
an
I've mentioned,
illumination
Europe seems
for
to be
people
going
to
through a
see.
very similar thing where America is being touted in the narrative as and we are, in a sense, the enemy because are not in favor of a one world government.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think, this is going to get even increasingly more evident as we go down this path. I mean, last week we had in Canada, there's a legislation introduced where, from my understanding, they've been banning weapons. There's already hundreds of weapons that they've banned, and they want Canadians to take them in, and basically surrender them to the government. Last week, I had a call from a friend of mine. He says, "Did you see the news today? The next level, they're saying that it will be
I
illegal to
hardly know what to
discharge a
say. I mean, we know
firearm
what
in
that
Canada
means.
in
We know what they're trying to
2026."
accomplish with all of that. Are the Canadian people really allowing it?
Well, this has really stirred up the patriots here. This is really like, they've, for maybe those that have been sitting on the fence, this is another, like another five
Yeah.
alarm fire that's come on. And it's tipping a lot of people over now saying, we must do something. And so we actually are even talking about Western Canada is much different than Eastern Canada. And, a lot of energy and resources are out of the West. Even the province I'm in, Alberta, we've got, I think we're in the number three global uh, oil resources in the world, let alone forestry and agriculture and other things. And so what we're seeing, especially here in the West, is a people, a grassroots movement standing up saying, we've tried this system, it's broken. It doesn't matter how well we write a legal opposition, they're all owned and controlled by the cabal. It doesn't matter how clever we are in bringing a legal fight, it doesn't matter because the corruption from the king and through the crown, all that, and the globalists.
They're not playing by
I
the
mean,
law. They're playing by
they're gonna
right.
drag the puck all day long, and we'll never get a victory out of that. They're not playing by the law. So this is where Canadians in the West are saying, it's time that we even do what they call a straw poll. And a straw poll is basically you ask the grassroots, you ask the people of Canada, outside of a political, mechanism of a vote, to come forward and say, hey, here's where I kind of stand on this. Do you agree with this or that? And so Alberta is actually going to be a hub, and the West, a hub for the liberation of Canada back to godly roots. So, it's not that, this 51st state, I mean, I don't see that as a solution. What I see is American support coming to us in the West saying we're standing against this deep state cabal
Right.
and
Right.
we
There's a
need
big
your
difference.
assistance. We're not
Right.
looking for you to come and rescue us. We're looking for your help, right? And there's a big difference in flipping this thing over for Canada to fulfill her destiny and to bring
Who are the
liberation
people, the
to us
names of the
from these
people who you
these
see
ones that are
actually
wanting
leading the
to turn us into
way
the first
for
First
this
Nation state.
liberation?
Well, you know what? That's a good question. Again, by the grace of God, God brought me into a relationship with a man named Grant Abraham. And Grant Abraham, he's an international lawyer. And Grant, he was actually, I call him like a David, actually. He actually was a sheep farmer as well as international lawyer. So he was out in the field feeding his sheep, looking after his sheep. And the Lord tapped him on the shoulder and says, hey, I've called you to go. And he's going, oh my goodness. And so he took his little lunch, his little bag of cheese and bread, and he says, because the Lord said, you go, I'll show up. You just show up and I'll take you. So it's been a journey where God has been really breathing upon Grant and to step into a role of federal leadership on this level. And I mean, it's quite remarkable. He actually ran in the federal conservative race for leadership several years ago. And he thought maybe that was a path that he could go in and maybe reform it from the inside, bring a voice. But they actually frauded him out of that election run. They took his money, 400,000 or no, 300 and some thousand dollars. They and so they said, "Oh, you don't have your money." He said, "Well, I do." And so he had two separate friends that got it done, showed them where the money was stolen, and then they said, "Oh, well, that really doesn't matter. You don't have enough signatures to run." He said, "Well, I've got a letter here from data da 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 da. I've got my signatures." So he kind of got them into a corner. And anyway, at that point, he could have taken them to court. He could have kind of gone down a route of that. But the Lord spoke to him and said, that's not the path I've called you to. I want you to start a new federal political party, grassroots, and we'll build from there. So he did. And incidentally, I had a dream about this united rail from the west to the east, this train going and moving, and a movement in the nation. Well, he ends up naming the party, and I didn't know
Oh,
this.
wow.
This is kind of behind the scenes. They named the party the United Party of Canada. And so anyway, I've actually had Grant take down to America with me. We've met many. I got to be a bit careful. Many
Okay.
American high level leaders at Camp David meetings, and they see him and they hear his heart and they see, and they, we've broken bread together. We've spent days, together, and they said, "You're the guy. We see that God's hand is upon you, and you're the guy for Canada." And so, even though he and Canada's kind of grassroots building under the radar a little bit, he does have a legitimate federal party, which actually will give him legitimacy to do what he needs to do as time goes on. And the support there continues to grow. But God is, leading this down a much different path. And so he is, to my awareness, the only true
Right. I understand.
political, governmental, I don't even
Right.
like using the word political because 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 what we're
Kingdom
actually
governance.
dealing
I'm
with
glad you
here now
pointed
is
that out.
governance,
Yeah. Yeah.
kingdom governance, and
Yes.
kingdom
Yes.
governance, but it's got a skin of political over it, to bring freedom to the nation. And so we've been sharing this narrative with our American friends in making steps towards the liberation of Canada, standing up against an illegitimate government, and making a declaration of independence. I mean, I'm way out on a limb here. I mean, this is like, I mean, this is like
Hmm.
crazy, big stuff, but I tell you, it's the truth, and God's favor has been upon it. And so when we out, we talk. I mean, our phones are ringing every day. Things are coming in every day. As people become illuminated with the truth of really what's going on, and so numbers are growing, and so yeah, that's so he's got an integration from the west coast of Canada to Nova Scotia on the east coast that is people are taking their places, and things are getting ready to stand up.
Barry spoke of the threat of illegal immigrants in Canada from different known terrorists and enemy nations, and how these military-age immigrants, with an estimated 500,000 Chinese and millions of Muslim Arabs, are not only a concern for Canada, but for the United States, with the potential of them crossing the Canadian border into the United States to bring additional harm. Whether they plan a militant infiltration or a type of assemblance infiltration, the threat is real. Barry spoke in particulars about the actions of the Chinese on Canadian soil, but what about the Muslims, the millions of Muslims he mentioned? If what I recently read about the Muslim assemblance infiltration in England is any indication of what could happen in Canada, the United States, the European Union, and other nations, we have reason for alarm. We know that proponents of a one-world government consider Christians a threat to their plan, but I don't see their consideration of how Muslims could be a threat to their plans. The Muslim tactic of assembling into culture to take it over from within is a matter we must carefully watch and be prepared to oppose. Today, in England, out of the 66 million people, about 4 million are Muslims. That's about 6%. Yet, with that relatively low percent, there are over 3,000 mosques, over 140 Sharia courts, more than 50 Sharia councils. Among the Muslims, 78% of the Muslim women do not work, and receive state support and free accommodations. 63% of Muslims do not work and receive state support and free housing. State-supported Muslim families have an average of 6 to 8 children who all receive free accommodations. Every school in the European Union is required to teach about Islam. The number one most common baby name in all of England is Mohammed. Additionally, the mayor of London is Muslim. The mayor of Birmingham is Muslim. The mayor of Leeds is Muslim. The mayor of Blackburn is Muslim. The mayor of Sheffield is Muslim. The mayor of Oxford is Muslim. The mayor of Luton is Muslim. The mayor of Oldham is Muslim. And the mayor of Rochdale is Muslim. As the one who compiled these statistics aptly stated, this is not immigration. This is invasion. We have to wonder why the one world government leaders of England would allow such infiltration and takeover unless they believe they have some mechanism in place to control the Muslims or other immigrant groups. Likewise, why would the one world government leaders of the European Union, the United States, and Canada be in favor of allowing open border immigration unless they think they can maintain the power and control? What these self-appointed elite are not getting is that they are being influenced by Satan, and they truly think they can overpower and outwit God. But God is at work in the midst of the Muslim people in the Middle East, which gives me every hope for God to work in the hearts of Muslims worldwide. Dutch Sheets, on his Give Him 15 that aired on April 1st, cites CBN News, quote, "Amid talk of a broader war in the Middle East, there's also news that a Jesus revolution may be underway. An unprecedented number of Muslims are choosing to follow Christ, especially in Iran, as people search for a better life. Iranians are growing tired of the Ayatollahs and a nation led by the empty promises of their Islamic theocracy. An anonymous internal poll found that 80% now prefer a democratic government, and many are leaving Islam. According to Todd Nettleton, Vice President of Messaging at Voice of the Martyrs, the faith option many are choosing is Jesus, with at least 1 million Muslims reportedly leaving Islam for Christianity. So, how is the regime reacting to this, with a reported 50,000 of the country's 75,000 mosques now closed? This is not something that is making the regime happy, and really, in many ways, they are seeking to solidify their power and to crush any kind of dissent." Then Dutch comments, quote, "Though a great persecution is taking place in other parts of the world, it is also true that the greatest harvest of souls in history has begun. Pray for this to continue and to increase exponentially. Pray for our brothers and sisters all around the world who suffer because of their faith in Christ." End quote. Knowing the Islamic faith is not just a religion, but is a complete government of life under the Muslim state that does not allow for any allegiance to any god but Allah, causes me to fundamentally state Muslims do not believe in a one-world government as represented by the World Economic Forum. They have their own idea of a one-world government under Islam. This is why I have serious concern for the increase of the Muslim population within the European Union and Canada, whose leaders are clearly pro-one-world government, as represented by the World Economic Forum. The increase of Islam, specifically radical Islam, could mean potential serious conflict within Europe and Canada as things progress. Please pray for the Holy Spirit to continue to move upon Muslims and all people who have yet to embrace the gospel of Jesus Christ. Also, I recommend you watch the Prager University video on this topic. You'll find the link in the show notes. I understand there are those who practice the Muslim faith who are recognized as open-minded, tolerant, and nonviolent. There are also those who are considered radical Muslims, who are construed as dogmatic, intolerant, and prone to violence. It's possible that the ideology of a one-world government will be opposed by those of the radical Muslim faith, rejecting the World Economic Forum's version in favor of their own radical Islamic version. We need to seek God about this specific area of spiritual warfare, and of course, this is in addition to all that is happening in the Middle East between Israel and Iran's proxy terrorist groups, and the increase of anti-Semitism worldwide and how proponents of the one world government are actually facilitating that, a topic I want to address in the near future. The one world government idea of open borders is a strategy often attributed to the young Count Richard Coudenhove Caligari, who founded the Pan-European Union just after World War I. He offered a vision of peaceful, democratic unity for Europe with no borders, a common currency, and a single passport. You can imagine, after all the carnage and losses of World War I, how the people would easily welcome such an offer for peaceful living. And you can see how those wanting to control the masses used the fear of war as a means to control. In his promise for a peaceful coexistence, the world was made to believe the families who had controlled the world through the banking industry, which I covered in my recent 3-part podcast called Freedom from Bondage, that these families had disappeared, essentially being defeated by World War I. In reality, they were still very active, just with a new role and different visibility than before, as evidenced by the later formation of what we now know as the European Union. Likewise, after World War II, the world was made to believe the British Empire had disappeared, when it had also been simply refashioned, operating under slightly different parameters. Keep in mind, the monarch of England under King Charles III today includes the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Additionally, the British Commonwealth of Nations represents over 56 so-called independent nations or member states, including Canada. Today, the British Commonwealth of Nations represents 20% of the world's nations, with a combined population of about 2.7 billion, almost a third of the global population. Whereas during the 1920s, the British Commonwealth of Nations was at its largest, representing about 23% of the nations of the world in terms of surface area, not military control. But not having military control was of no concern, since the City of London has always operated as the nerve center for global banking. Remember, it was the Rothschilds family who founded the banking systems of the nations, who had the motto, "Control the wealth of the government, and you control the nation." Since 1855, from the Bank of London and its successors, there has been offshore banking, illegal transactions, drug money, money laundering, opium wars, and organized crime syndicates, such as in Asia, and all were part of the British operations. Think Hong Kong and the Shanghai Banking Corporation, or the HSBC, with their headlines about a decade ago. And more recently, the Toronto Dominion Bank, one of the biggest in Canada. This Canadian bank was fined $3 billion for its collusion within its offshore accounts, laundering immense amounts of money. Again, examples of the gross corruption that exists in the banking industry in effort to enslave nations and their people, which President John F. Kennedy tried to abolish. President Kennedy wanted to bring America out of this financial slavery, leading to what was then called the New World Order, to its truer foundations as a constitutional republic, and he wanted to help other nations become sovereigns with their own economic self-direction and no longer slave states to the elite. This is what I believe God is working to accomplish now through President Trump. And from the moment President Trump was inaugurated, he has caused a whirlwind of events that are not all readily understood. I'm trying to make sense out of all things, just like everyone else. So what follows is my best educated guess, influenced by insights gained through prayer and seeking the Lord. If you have ideas contrary to mine, please let me hear from you. I don't claim to have a corner on truth, but I do claim to having a relationship with the one true God who promises in time to bring us into all truth. I don't believe President Trump is naive or ignorant. I firmly believe the 4 years while Biden claimed to be president, that DJT was very busy strategizing how he would go about his promise to make America great again. And because we do know President Trump has some moles in his cabinet, we are praying for God to expose and remove them before any real damage can be done. We need to trust God that he will answer our prayers that are consistent with his word and his will. I agree with Barry that President Trump is poking at the one world government proponents with his claim of making Canada our 51st state. Think of the power the United States could have over the plans of the self-appointed elite if Canada were our 51st state, or if the United States and Canada became even stronger allies than we've ever been. Barry stated there is a strong group of Canadian patriots who are ready to defy an illegitimate government and establish the nation as its own constitutional republic. However, opposing all of this is Mark Carney, who is a long-term, card-carrying proponent of a one-world government who is working very hard to maintain Canada under the British monarchy, where they would become subjected to the one-world government. The vision God gave Barry about President Trump explaining he's working to correct things in the United States and then the United States will help Canada seems consistent with what God has revealed through other respected modern-day prophets. Specific to Greenland, think of the power the United States could have over the plans of the self-appointed elite if Greenland were annexed to the United States, or if Donald Trump helped Greenland to break away from the Danish monarchy to also become their own sovereign nation and become a strong ally to the United States. President Trump has repeatedly said Greenland's takeover is essential for world peace. If it means completing the efforts President John F. Kennedy began to help other nations become sovereign and enjoy the same blessings of being a constitutional republic as the United States has enjoyed, that would definitely contribute to world peace. I have more questions than I have answers, which is why I'm grateful to have next week for us to finish this 3-part interview with Prophet Barry Wunsch. But one question we need to consider each and every week is how we, as God's children, should respond to all that's going on in the world to be sure we are in a proper partnership with God to see His kingdom will done on earth. I've already included specific action steps of prayer we must follow, but there's more. Collectively, or as the body of Christ Jesus referred to as the ecclesia, we need to uphold God's standards in such a way that we stand out from the world of unbelievers, with a firm foundation of faith in God that He will do what He says He will do. And like Barry says, He has never lost a fight. We can have a bold confidence and peace and joy that is not adversely impacted by what we see. We must walk by faith and not by sight, proclaiming the goodness of God and declaring and decreeing His promises, believing they will come to pass. We need to pray for our brothers and sisters in Canada and seek the Lord for the nation of Canada to successfully fill its destiny. Individually, we need to humbly go into our secret prayer place to seek God to speak to us and give us the personal guidance and direction we need in our respective lives. Every one of us is dealing with unprecedented hardships in the world, while we also have personal battles. I received a text from a very dear friend just while I was recording this podcast that her husband has been placed in hospice. I spoke to my sister the other day who is suffering with 5 different autoimmune disorders, and she's not doing well at all. And we have our own daughter who's been battling a life and death situation for almost 2 years, if not more. I understand. But this is like I said in the beginning, we're at a time when the enemy is pulling out all the stops, and we must do everything in partnership with God to prevent the enemy from any further advances and, in fact, to cause him to retreat. Amen. Barry has a lot more to share with us next week with part 3 in this series, and with next week's episode, I'm expecting to be able to announce the following week's guest, who is in a unique position to help Canada and the world. Now, I ask you to please listen to my closing announcements and take advantage of the many goods and services I bring you in an effort to at least cover the costs of this podcast The first announcement clarifies more about the changes in our Greece tour, now scheduled for April 2026. I really want you to be able to join us, so please listen carefully and send me the information in the email to save your place. It may seem far off, but most people make plans for a significant vacation about a year in advance. So if you haven't already expressed interest in traveling with us in April 2026, now is the time to do so. We want to have about 30 people total because this size group works best for the specific tour I have in mind. We'll be walking the footsteps of the Apostle Paul. I'm using the time between now and October 2025 to determine if we have enough interest, and the trend indicates we definitely should. We have just about 30 people on the list now, but I'd like to have more because when it comes to the actual day of making a commitment, things could have changed, and I want to be able to have at least 30 actually attend the tour. So, if you think you'd like to be part of the Faith to Live By Christian tour with me in Greece during April 2026, now's the time to get your name and number in your party on the list. There's no obligation at this point. You're just expressing your interest. Attendees need to arrange their own air travel to and from the Athens International Airport. To get your name on the list, send an email to faithtoliveby@PamelaChristianMinistries.com with the word Greece in the subject line. In the body of the email, provide your name, contact information, and number of people you expect to be in your party. This will place your name on the interested in attending list, but does not obligate you in any way. It merely assures you have first right of refusal when down payments are due. If you didn't get the details written down that I just shared, simply visit my Beyond the Podcast page using the link in the show notes. If you like what you hear from me with this podcast, I highly recommend my book series, my award-winning blog, and consider signing up for my certificate course in apologetics. My aim with that course is to help people learn how not only to use apologetics to share truth with others, but to help Christian leaders incorporate apologetics into their respective ministries so more Christians are learning how to share their faith. You can learn more by using the link in the show notes. For now, I offer my weekly podcasts, my blog, and bi-monthly e-newsletter at no cost. And certainly I have hard costs associated with doing all I do. If you've been blessed by my work and would like to help my work reach others, why not consider partnering with me? For as little as $10 a month, you can become a partner. Then together we can reach even more people for Jesus. Simply visit my Pamela Christian Ministries homepage and then click on the Give button at the top menu bar. Or if you prefer, you can go directly to the Give page using the link in the show notes. To become a partner, you can use my PayPal or Venmo account, but you will also see other ways you can support my work on that page. Whether you choose to become a monthly partner, give a one-time donation, purchase my books and products from my web store, or support my affiliate sponsors, anything you can do to help me continue this work would be greatly appreciated. And as always, your prayers and telling others about me and my ministry work is much needed. When it comes to my selection of affiliate sponsors, I first look for Christian-owned and operated businesses, and I make a point of personally using the products or services so I can fully endorse them. I seek sponsors that offer products or services you can get via the internet worldwide, and I specifically consider what is common to most people universally. So you'll find health, beauty, and wellness products through Dr. Zelenko's Z-Stack supplements, and from Operation Tomahawk, and from QE Strong. Dr. Zelenko's Z-Stack supplements are truly amazing and are available to my listeners for a 5% discount per purchase or a 10% discount for a monthly subscription using the promo code FTLB. Operation Tomahawk is a membership purchase program with an American-owned and operated company offering personal and household care products that are not made of toxins or genetically modified ingredients. Stop buying national brands from corporations that are part of the deep state cabal. Use the link in the show notes, and from the drop-down menu under How Did You Hear About Us, select Pamela Christian, Faith to Live By. You may have heard my interview with Rob Renee about QE Strong. Discover the benefits of quantum energy to overcome all sorts of ailments. Visit QEstrong.com and use the promo code FTLB at checkout to receive your discount. Then my newest affiliate I'm really excited to bring you is Q Streaming. That's CUE Streaming Television. People with United States addresses can get over 3,000 channels, including live TV with streaming television without a contract. Get all of your local networks and favorite movie and sports and pay-per-view channels for about half of what cable costs. See the video promo link in the show notes to learn more. Affiliate sponsors only provide financial support to me when you purchase what they offer. So before you support Amazon or any other retailer, if I offer what you're looking for, please purchase through me. When it comes to special occasions, birthdays, or Christmas gifts, consider my books, jewelry, CDs, and more from my web store or any of the affiliate goods and services I offer. When you purchase from my web store, be sure to use the promo code TRUTH, TRUTH, to receive a 20% discount. Again, you'll find all the links in the show notes. If you like the content and resource material I bring you with this podcast, you'll find much more by connecting with me through my blog. In fact, my blog has been awarded 2 unsolicited awards for Christian content. And I'm also very active on social media. I can cover much more on social media than I can with this weekly podcast. And if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to my complimentary bi-monthly e-newsletter. I offer encouragement, special offers, and one of my signature recipes with each and every edition. Yep, I'm a foodie and I love to entertain, which is why Faith, Family, Friends, and Food is a bonus segment of my bi-monthly e-newsletter. To receive even more, please be sure to check out my dedicated podcast listeners page, Beyond the Podcast. Here's where we can connect exclusively and you can download complimentary devotionals, resources, and more. On that page, I also ask you to help me learn more about you and what you want by completing the form visible once you scroll down that page. And something that is very easy for you to do and would mean a lot to me is for you to rate, subscribe, or comment on this podcast according to what your preferred listening platform allows. You know how it works. The more likes and subscriptions to this podcast, the more opportunity we have to expand the listening audience. And that means we can reach more people with the gospel message of Jesus while helping people learn how to better apply their Christian faith. I hope you'll join me next week and tell your friends and family to listen right here on Faith to Live By, where we learn how to gain spiritual victory over life's issues. Until next week, I'm Pam Christian, asking you to remember Christ died for us. The least we can do is live for Him.